Hey, episode 76 of the Nashville Artist podcast is now out, featuring Devin Drake, a remarkable artist who specializes in miniature models, music, and a deep love for action figures. In this episode, Devin takes us on a mesmerizing journey through his art. He creates miniature 3D worlds that capture nostalgic moments from a bygone era. His piece, Summer 96, beautifully encapsulates this feeling of significance. Discover Devin's process for turning 2D art into intricate miniature universes filled with nostalgia, splendor, and dreamlike surrealism. From playing with action figures like Tim Burton's Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to building model cars with his brother and grandfather, Devin's childhood experiences inspire his art. Learn how Devin's precision-oriented approach as an analytical artist enhances his ability to scale down objects and create charming caricatures. Join me on the Nashville Artist podcast as we delve into the captivating world of Devin Drake, where nostalgia meets meticulous craftsmanship. Enjoy the podcast episode.
Today?
Yeah.
Just at my house. Sundays and Mondays are, I don't really have a day off or like a schedule because I just work at home. So, but Sundays and Mondays are my girlfriend's day off. So we just usually just take it easy and wake up kind of late and hang out at the house. Slow start.
Regain your energy and stuff.
Unless I have something like pressing, like work wise that I'd like need to get finished. But
what is your girlfriend's name?
Danelle.
Danelle.
Yeah.
That's a really pretty name.
Yeah, she doesn't use it enough. Like we go to a coffee shop, get coffee. She'll use my name because they're always like Danielle or like something else. So
Danelle and Devin.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, but
why? So she'll use Devin even if you're
just
not with her.
Well, sometimes I think, yeah.
Wow.
Because there was one point we went in and the barista, the person on the counter I was there too, and she was like, "So are both your names Devin?" And we're like, "No." Like she just uses my name a lot because it's easier to like write down in a cup or something,
Instead of being disappointed by all the misspellings.
Yeah, or like spelling it out each time, or like all that. So she's like, "Just Devin."
It takes a lot more effort.
Yeah.
When it doesn't. When you're just.
When it doesn't have
coffee,
to.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't have to do all this. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll get started here.
Sure, let's do it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Nashville Artist. I'm Jordan, and today Devin Drake is here. Thank you for coming over here and doing this.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So where are you from?
I'm from, I was born in Nashville, but grew up in Springfield, which is 35, 40 minutes north. Yeah.
Nice. Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I've got two brothers. I've got a younger brother who's like my kid brother, and I have the middle brother who's 3 years younger than I am.
Okay,
so he's 32.
You have two younger brothers.
Two younger brothers. Yeah, I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest on both sides of my family.
Okay, are they into art and music?
My youngest brother is my kid brother. He is. He's always been since he was a kid, making things and
What are their names?
The youngest one is Braden, and my middle brother, or my other younger brother, is Drew.
Braden, Drew, and Devin.
Yeah. But my Drew, he's 30. How old am I? He's 32. He's never been into arts or really anything like that, but now he does built construction stuff, but not so much like or they're building a new skyscraper construction. They do like the big, huge, like barn, like livable barn spaces, like they're always like in Franklin or like, building these huge, massive, expensive
Playhouses.
playhouse barn things. Yeah, and they're crazy.
That's
So he's like the foreman now that like he got in a few years ago, probably like 2017, 18, and doing he knew a guy that did stuff like that, like remodeling. So he got into doing like demo work. So he would just go in with no experience and like, all right, we need to take this wall out. So
There's a sledgehammer.
Take a hammer, bust up this countertop. So he started doing that, and then he slowly started learning how to like rebuild walls and all that stuff. And so now he's, along the way he met some other people, and so now he's doing this, and he's excelling at it, which is it's nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
So they both also live in Nashville?
He and his family, he's got 2 little ones now, very small. They bought a house in Ashland City.
Oh, okay.
So not too far away from home. And then my youngest, Braden, he and his wife, they live in Bellevue. So
awesome.
Everyone's fairly close by.
And you said the one, Braden's the one that's into art?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does music.
What kind of music does he do?
Kind of like some indie. He's quite a bit younger, so I mean, he got really big into Tame Impala and kind of like that psychedelic rock, and then a little bit of pop mixed in with it. So he does that, but I think he took a couple drum lessons when he was young, and it kind of stuck with him, and then he eventually got back into drums, and so he's a pretty good drummer. Then he's self-taught musician, otherwise like piano and keys in general, and then guitar and bass. So
that's cool. And you said
he's doing well. Yeah.
Does he have a group, or does
it's just him right now, just like self-recording stuff, and
nice.
I've been talking to him about like, yeah, you need to like put together a little band, get some people together and start doing some shows, and so I think he's going to start trying to do that.
That's cool.
But yeah,
Braden.
Yeah,
I'll keep an eye out for him.
Yeah. I'll let you know when he starts playing out. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
What about your parents? Are they into art and music?
Not real. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I remember growing up, and my dad would draw some. Like when I was a kid, I grew up painting and illustrating mostly. I guess through like kind of like that, like the academic points of like, through like kindergarten, middle school, like I was always drawing. And then I got into painting, like acrylic painting, for a while, and I was always like pushed to do like enter stuff into the fair. But my parents never did much of that. My dad used to draw some, but like you would like, I remember being a kid and be like, hey, Dad, draw this airplane. And I would take him like a toy airplane, and he would just kind of draw it out. It's all right. Nothing crazy, but like that was my first like, oh, like cool. Like I can't draw that, but you can. So I'm going to take you this little Hot Wheels car and like draw that for me real quick. It'd be like a little quick sketch of it. But yeah, no, they don't. And yeah, they don't really do too much creatively, I guess.
Right.
I think like my mom's a big dancer. She loves dancing. She always has. My dad, played guitar a little bit when I was a kid. Like he grew up, kind of into music and stuff. I don't think he ever had a band, but he always kept his guitar like in our bonus room, and it was always in a case. But like he would every once in a while he would get out and play it. And
that's awesome. What kind of dancing did your mom do?
She did. Or whatever. She always enjoyed dancing. Like when I was a kid, I mean, living in this area, her and my grandma and my aunt would go to like Wild Horse, which is a saloon on 2nd. I think it's still there. Not sure, maybe it moved, but that used to be like the place to go, and it would be just like live music and like line dancing on Broadway, or it's on 2nd. So I remember they used to go do that a lot. So that was always a big thing. And then at some point, I think when I was a kid, I took dance lessons with her for like a season, just like swing dancing or something, or just, 2-step. And then she started dancing more once we were kind of out of the house. My parents split up, and then she started taking like dance lessons. So she did ballroom dancing, and she did like some hip hop, and she did a lot of swing dancing. But
Wow.
yeah, she did all this other stuff, and she really got into it for a long time. And she would go around and kind of do shows, or like, you know, not shows. What do you call them? Just performances, recitals, I guess. You know, with like a group of people. So she did that kind of stuff for a while, and she doesn't do that anymore. But she still does go. She still just loves.
What are your parents' names?
John and Pam.
John and Pam.
Yeah, just regular old names.
Nice. So, what were you into when you were a little kid?
I mean, I've always made stuff. My brother and I played outside growing up, you know. That was like, it was, I don't know. It was like weekends, like my dad would be like, hey, it's time to get up, like be like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, which is understandable, you know, because he was always up early, but he was like, all right, it's time to get up, and you got to get up. It's nice outside, go outside, do something outside. And if, you know, especially on the weekend, it was like, all right, if you're not outside playing, then you're going to be inside cleaning or doing something like that. So we were always outside or at my grandparents' house because they lived in like the middle of the forest. So we were always out there, like, be gone all day long, like have a backpack. I mean, we were probably like 10 years old, 10 and 7, you know, and be like, all right, just be back before it gets dark. You know, if you get hungry, come back and eat some lunch or take some snacks with you. And like, no one cared. Yeah, like no one cared, and you know, building forts in the forest. But yeah, I mean, I feel like we played with action figures, and of course, and remember making little houses out of. We always had like stacks of VHS tapes, you know, by the TV or something, like, and they were all mostly like home recorded of like, oh, we're gonna record this off of cable or whatever it's on, and so we always had these like stacks of just blank and like, you know, with the tape on it on the side with handwriting.
Right.
And so we would make like little houses for action figures out of those and like stack them kind of like cards, you know. So you did all these things. Yeah, we would play with, I mean, all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, Lego, of course. Like I feel like every kid, even now, still plays with Lego. But like, I mean,
as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah, if I had room to keep and the money to buy Lego now, I would still play with it.
Definitely.
But yeah, so we did all that, and I don't know, just normal video games for sure. But
what kind of action figures? Like what?
What
all did you have?
I probably most notably, for me, if I still like have a lot of them.
Nice.
But like early as a kid, the like Batman, like the, you know, 89 and like 91 Batman Returns, like those action figures, the Tim Burton, the Michael Keaton Batmans. I had I had a few of those, and then I had a bunch of the like the animated series Batmans. I had so many of those. I feel like because they just like released them like in so many different forms, you know, with like accessories and all that. And then the original Ninja Turtles, which I still have a few of. And those are the only thing that, like, if I'm out, like if I'm at like McKay's, if I see one, I'm like, oh, I had that. I'm gonna buy this for $5 because like I don't know where mine is. It's probably gone, and like I'll just like put it on a shelf or something, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what I had, and then when, you know, when like 97 rolled around and Star Wars was re-released in theaters. We didn't grow up with Star Wars really. I maybe had seen Star Wars before that, but I don't remember seeing it. My parents weren't like sci-fi people, you know. They didn't watch that stuff. So, but when it came out, I remember going to see it in all three of them in theaters, you know, as they came out, and then had the trilogy, like the box set trilogy with like the silver or like the shiny like gold and like Darth Vader case or whatever, like the little clamshell case, and had that, and then, you know, they were re-releasing all these action figures, and it was like, so I had a ton of Star Wars action figures for a while, and I think we still have a lot of those. Some of them are probably like their heads are ripped off and stuff because we were pretty ruthless with like action figures. Like I'll still find some, I'm like, man, I wish we hadn't like mangled this thing so bad, like. But yeah, so I mean that's what I feel like pretty normal like kid stuff for like the 90s, you know.
Yeah. Man, I was like you, I was super into action figures. I had Star Wars ones, and I had Lord of the Rings ones.
Really?
Yeah.
I never had any Lord of the Rings ones.
That was kind of my time period, whatever, when I was a kid. But yeah, fucking, you have the greatest time with it because you can be the film director.
You do whatever you want.
And you can be the actor because you're like...
Yeah, but then you tell your own stories and like there's no rules.
Scenarios.
You know, you have... Yeah, I remember we had, because especially with Batman and like Ninja Turtles, there was so many different... And just superheroes in general, I feel like we probably had all superheroes, but it was like they had all these accessories and vehicles, and they're all made the same scale, like the 3/4, like, you know, 3/4 or like 3 3/4 inch figurines, you know, like the
6 inches, whatever.
Or like whatever. The classic like action figure scale through the 90s, and like all of the accessories mostly you could use with any other action figure. So you'd have like, you know, the Ninja Turtles in like the Batman mobile, and like you could have all these crossover things, like, well, like we meet Luke Skywalker now, like Donatello and Luke Skywalker. So like there were no rules.
Yeah, and I had 12-inch tall G.I. Joe dolls, like Max Steel and like all the military stuff and the vehicles. And man, yeah, I love playing with those out on the rock. I had this boulder in my front yard, and I would play with them on the rock and the dirt. Yeah, and hours and hours of fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of... I mean, we had like movies on like, you know, VHS tapes, but there's probably like 1 or 2 TVs in the house at the time, and like my parents they're like, well, you need to watch this some other time. Like, go play. It's nice out, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what we did.
I remember cutting up rubber bands and making like little bungee cords for them and throwing them off my treehouse and letting them bounce back up.
Yeah.
Just like anything, you know. Cutting up my socks and making clothes out of them. Just, man, it's like adult, like action figures, man. Greatest.
Yeah, and now I just love to like, I think I have a box probably in storage now with like all of the action figures that we kept. It just sucks that like along the way, we're like, they don't really play with these anymore. We'll have a yard sale. Man, I was like, some of those that I had, or if I had the foresight to not just completely ruin them.
Right. They could be worth
a lot of money.
Yeah.
But, you know, whatever.
I'm like, Mom, where are my Pokemon cards?
Yeah. I remember I never got into... I think I was probably... I was in middle school when Pokemon came out, but I never, like, played. I collected
the cards.
Because I was like, I don't know.
They look cool.
They look cool, and I used to just draw them, you know?
Yeah.
I had a notebook, and I was just like, draw this one now. And I would have like people ask me like, "Hey, can you draw this one for me?"
Sick.
Like, yeah, sure. You know,
dude. Yeah, and then creating your own Pokemon, like draw your own.
Yeah, the hybrids. Yeah, pretty sweet.
Sick. So, when you were like younger, what first got you into like art and
I don't know,
miniatures and stuff?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know why. I think it's just like inherent. I think I was probably not pushed, but it was like, oh, he's good. Like as a kid, like just drawing. Like all kids like are creative, I think.
Yeah.
Within a certain way, and I think a lot of that as you get older, like you maybe lose interest or you get kind of pushed out of it for some other thing, or like sports, you know. And I was never really pushed out of it. Like I was encouraged to do it, and I think that's what kept me doing it. Not that I was better than anyone else at it, but I think my parents thought that I was, you know. So they're like, oh, like you should do this, you know, you should enter these things or whatever it might be, just to be creative. So I just did it, you know. I did it up until probably like when I got into like the junior and senior year of high school, where I just kind of lost some interest in like, I was like, I don't care about art right now. Like I'm in high school, like I want to hang out with people and whatever. But I always still like did illustrations and drew and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I've always done creative stuff. I used to do a lot of model cars when I was a kid. That was a big thing. My great granddad we'd go hang out there, and it'd be like, all right, we're gonna go to like Walmart or Kmart or wherever, you know, box store where there was, and they used to have like huge just aisles of models, like model cars. Like if you think of like the Lego aisle, like it would just be model cars, an entire aisle. And they obviously don't have that anymore at Walmart. But yeah, so anything you would ever want, you would just go and be like, oh, and he would pick out one, and then like we would pick out one, and then we'd like go and like kind of put them halfway together,
Wow.
and yeah. So I think that was when I was obviously old enough to do that. So I was probably 10 to 12 or something like that. But so that yeah, I don't know.
That's so sick. So would you go like, what would y'all typically get? Like a plane or like a car or like a...
Usually cars. I feel like, I mean, he was my great granddad. So like I was telling you, he was in World War II and all that. And so he would get classic, 1950s vehicles. And he would put together those or whatever. And then I think I would probably get like, he would get the ones that were like just all the plastic, so it's like unpainted, and you have to you're supposed to like paint them and do all these things to them,
The super glue,
like the real model kits, the vacuum formed model kits. And we would always go for like the easier ones, the ones that are like the metal, like the die cast metal ones that it's already painted, and you just have to kind of like put the stuff in a certain order, and it stacks, and you put 2 screws in the bottom, then you got a model car, that kind of stuff. And we would go for like Dodge Vipers and Plymouth Prowlers. It was late 90s, early 2000s. So, the cars that you would have posters of that you would get from like a book fair,
Oh yeah. The Lotus Elise.
Yeah. So Dodge Viper with the 2 the blue one with the 2 white racing stripes. I feel like was like that was the car. Yeah.
Or the Lambo posters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you were younger, with like really some like early influences where you're like, wow, that's really cool, I want to be like that.
Like art wise,
yeah, or artist wise,
not really. I mean, I didn't come from that world so much of like the art world. I was just like, I mean, I did like personally, I just like drew stuff, and like I would be like, my mom would like draw us a Christmas card this year, and I was like, okay. So that's the kind of art world I came from. I didn't come from and it was a small town, so we weren't surrounded by a lot of art. So I didn't have a lot of influence. And growing up, like watching Star Wars and like all these movies, as a kid, you don't realize like, oh, those are models, those are toys. Because it was the same time as like Jurassic Park, where there's like fake dinosaurs, like CGI. And so for a long time, I wanted to be like an animator or like a computer, like a CGI. That was a huge thing, especially with like Pixar. So I wanted to kind of do that for a while.
I guess you liked Hasbro, the toy company.
Mm-hmm.
Those are models, or like that's art scheme or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, but it was never like I was never introduced in a way that like you could do this. Like this is someone's job. I never just like thought about like, oh, like these are just the toys I play with. These are toys. These are not for like, it never clicked on me that I was like, oh, like people design these. These are adults designing toys, and this is what they do. Like, I just never thought about it or had someone tell me that you could do that. But no, I was always pushed to do something in art, and I almost went to school for art after high school, but ultimately decided against it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what drove me to. I've just always made things and enjoyed it, and it's kind of been like granted, there's been quite a few times in my late teens and through my 20s where I just didn't do anything for like years. I was like, I'm into something else.
Yeah.
Went to school for music and engineering. Like,
oh really?
Yeah, and then that was kind of short lived.
Where did you go to school for music?
SAE. Oh. It was like a 9-month program.
Okay.
It was like a fast track.
What instrument do you play?
I grew up playing guitar. I think too, like the art thing kind of took a big back seat to like when I was in high school. I started playing, like probably like a freshman in high school. I started playing guitar, taking lessons and all of that, and did that for a while. So I got into that kind of narrative of like, oh, like I'm learning this and like try to put a band together, which never. There's a few people like I would play with at their house, like, he plays bass. I'm like, let's go play or like, oh, we put like a little band together and like made one song that we never performed,
Yeah.
but like never put a band together. And then by the time I really got serious about it, that's when I went to school for engineering, and after that, did that for a couple of years, and ran like live sound a couple places, and worked in a studio, a pretty good studio, like
sound audio engineering.
Yeah, like worked in a private studio for a country artist, and that kind of sucked the life out of me.
Yeah,
because I was like, this isn't fun. I was like, I'm not doing anything. Like, this isn't creative. This isn't playing music. This is just, I remember really the nail in the coffin, because I would have to go in on Saturdays sometimes, and I would just be taking like the space between snare hits out of a drum track, where it's just like you're just deleting the dead space between the snare hits, and I'd just go through a song in all the comps and be like, oh, like trying to comp other like pieces in that like fit better, and like sync everything up time wise, and just I was like, this is terrible. So I stopped doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like in middle school and high school, like you said you did some art classes, or like?
Yeah, I mean I would, in middle school and high school, I would take like every art class that I could, because I was like, that's easy. I was like, not because it was easy. I mean, it was easy.
But it was fun. So
it was fun. Like, I enjoyed it. They were like, you should take all these other, math classes and stuff to get you ready for college. And I was just like, I don't have to take that right now. I'm not going to, but I will take as long as I get like my core classes that I have to graduate, then I will take every art class that there is.
Yeah.
And I did.
What kind of media? Painting, like?
I feel like in high school, especially like where I went to school in Springfield, it was like you had art 1, 2, and 3, which are just like more advanced iterations of the one before.
Yeah.
And then we had a vocational school that was attached to our high school that was like the hub for the rest of the county. Like, we'd come in and take classes there. So I had like a drafting class that was pretty cool. That was like, I hadn't done anything like that, so it was like more like architecture based, I guess. Like, if you would have continued in that same realm, you would have led like to architecture. So you had like the big drafting tables with the big movable straight edges, and you learned how to like, I don't know, draft basically, which was cool.
Like create blueprints.
Kind of. I remember there was a few things where we had to like design your own like layout of like a bottom floor of a house or something. So you would like, and so you would, you would really think about your measurements and scale. I feel like now I'm just thinking there was one where like you learn a lot about perspective, like 2-point, 3-point perspective. Like, you make 2 points and then you make a third one, and that's how you get your horizon lines and all these things, which was super cool, which I had never done at that point. And still things that I use today. But yeah, I think if I could go back and do it, I would just be like, oh, I'm just going to do like maybe architecture. Yeah.
Interesting.
But
what
it's a
other?
little too late now.
What all mediums of art have you created in? Like miniatures, painting?
Yeah, so like I grew up like just pencil, charcoal, whatever, and then a lot of pencil and charcoal when I was younger. And then acrylic painting I did a lot of when I was younger, like pre-high school, I would say. And then once I got up into high school, like I still did some illustration. I always had a notebook and would just like sketch stuff, probably to a fault because I wouldn't pay attention in class. So I did that, and then after high school, I think I kind of switched to doing more music, and just like, especially after going to SAE, like I had a lot of the equipment just to make some rudimentary, like record my own stuff. So I started getting really into that, and then kind of fell out of that. I don't remember why I did, but I did after a few years, and probably in my early 20s, it was just like I was like I'm just gonna like hang out with people and like I'm gonna work and like probably still did some art, here and there, and I had a lot of buddies doing film stuff. So at that time, and so I started helping out on like their short films. They were at Watkins and just helping out and being on set, especially after I went to music school. I was doing like not sound design, but just recording, going out with a boom because they needed somebody, and I had experience with microphones, so I would do that. And then I got into film, then eventually started building sets and some miniatures and stuff for short films, which kind of led me to the continuation of just doing miniatures. I think like it got me back into that world and like the possibilities. So started doing that. But yeah, for a while I did one-to-one like cardboard sculptures. Like I would pick like a coffee maker, and I'd be like, cool, I'm going to make that to scale as detailed as I can just out of cardboard and like not paint it, just like let it be cardboard, So I did that for a few years. And I think that's what really got me back into being creative, or like maybe finding that footing again of like, oh, this is what I enjoy doing. This is what I should be doing, is being creative, not, obviously I need to focus on work and like paying rent, but I don't know, there's been a lot of stuff that I've dabbled in.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Creative wise.
How you've gotten into, at one point in time, you were really into that.
Yeah.
Each one of those things. Music, film, audio, playing with the toys. Like it kind of really, like everything feeds back into each other.
Yeah.
Everything that you've done is like.
Well, I think it's just being a creative person, it's like, even now, I would love to get into like, there's so many different things, like creative things, or just like hands-on things. Like I would love to learn how to weld and do metal fabrication.
Dude, yeah.
And it's so practical. Like there's so many uses for it. It's like, I don't have the space to do it or the time. I could find the time, but it's like the space, so one day I'll have the space where I can like teach myself how to do it, do all this stuff. And my buddy and I, probably 2012 to 15, started doing like furniture and building furniture, and really enjoyed that. And that took the creative space. That was my creative thing. Like I didn't draw, I didn't do any of this stuff, but we built furniture and it was all right furniture. We didn't know what we were doing, so it definitely got to a point where we were like, okay, this is how you do this. But really enjoyed that, really designing, sitting down with like a notebook, sketchbook, and like trying to design furniture concepts without having any previous knowledge on how to do that. Did that for a while. But yeah, I think maybe I have always had like a creative outlet. It's just changed so drastically.
Yeah.
There's been a very few moments of time in my life where I haven't done something creative.
Wow. So during your kind of musical creative time, what who were you really into music wise, and like what
during that time
influencing your guitar or whatever?
Man, during that time I had so many, just because I grew up being in Springfield, a small town, before the age of probably 15, before I could like drive or like work at a place where it wasn't like there was more music. I grew up with classic rock and like solid gold oldies, like, and everything kind of in between. It wasn't the modern music that, the kids in like inner city schools were listening to. So I didn't get into any modern bands until I was probably 15 or 16. It was like I grew up with like Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, and that's when I played guitar. Prior to being 16 years old, it was like that was what I was playing. That's what I was learning. So yeah, I didn't get into like even like some of the like the 90s grunge. Like I knew it because it just like existing during that time, like you heard it, but like my parents didn't listen to it, so I didn't have a CD of it. I had AC/DC and Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, and old tapes that my parents had that I had jacked from them.
Yeah, oldies, dude.
Yeah, and then like my mom, she didn't listen to classic rock really, so she listened to like, I feel like the classic rock that she got was like Journey, or like Styx or something like that. The edge of like rock music.
Yeah,
where it's almost like soft rock. I'm not gonna say that because like REO Speedwagon, it's still pretty rock, but like it wasn't Black Sabbath and like the psychedelic
or in your face.
Yeah, it was like a little more subtle, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it was like solid gold oldies, Motown, all that stuff. Music, yeah, it was all of that, 50s and 60s, Motown, and we used to have a radio station. 96.3, which was like it was oldies 96.3, and like that's what I mean. If I were in the car with her,
right?
If it weren't Prince, which she loved Prince, it was that station. So I was like, I knew all of that. I had all that influence, and on the other side, I had all of like the hard rock, classic rock, stuff. And then once I started working, I worked in restaurants. When I started working in a restaurant, I was like 15 or 16, and I did that up until, I've worked in restaurants in one form or the other since then, up until this past year. So like, it wasn't until then where I started listening to kind of more modern music, where I was like, oh, like I'm with my peers now, and like I'm with people that are like 7 years older than I am versus 25 years older than I am. So like I'm getting like a lot of this like Alice in Chains, like oh man, like I know some of these songs just like kind of, or like Pearl Jam, Nirvana, like all those like records. And I was like, oh, but now I have like the access to the whole record. Because at the time, like unless I had money to go buy it, you weren't getting it like you weren't just like listening to it on the internet,
Right.
iTunes Music had probably just come out, even if it had, and I was like, and then you still had to buy the stuff, or unless you had like LimeWire, which I did a lot of LimeWire.
Oh yeah.
But that was still, I was probably 16 or 17 doing that. So I feel like nowadays it's so much more accessible.
YouTube. Everything.
YouTube. I mean, I remember YouTube first coming out and
like
being in high school. And it was like, oh shit, you gotta check out this website, YouTube. Everything's on there, like eBaum's World. And then like you go like the next week and it's like blocked. You're like, no.
Man. Dude, yeah. I remember one of the first videos I ever watched on YouTube was Another One Bites the Dust by Queen.
Yeah.
I remember watching that video, and I had a little digital tape recorder, and I would tape record it, and then at school I'd be able to play it.
Yeah. That's like, I remember the first MP3 player I had, I was probably in 7th or 8th grade, and it could hold like 10 songs. Like, it was like, like seriously, 10 songs. And you're like, all right, I'm tired of these 10, like basically you just put a record on there and then you listen to it. But like, it had like toggle switches and shit, and like a tiny little like LCDs, LCD screen, but it was like just the track,
right?
I don't know. I don't know if it said like, I don't know if it said, yeah. This was before shuffles and stuff came out. This was like, I don't know what kind of. It was probably like a JBL MP3 player. But yeah, I remember having one of those and being like, "This is awesome." I was like, "This is cool." Like, I don't have to have a CD. I can just have these 10 songs I can listen to.
Yeah.
Technology.
Yeah. So, why would you say you're drawn to art and miniatures and music?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's, especially it's just human nature to be drawn to those outlets, I think. And I think most people don't call them, like not most people who don't call themselves creatives are still creatives in some way, or they have the desire to be. They just don't necessarily act on it or don't think they have the time to do it. So I think everyone's kind of drawn to something, like that. I think a lot of people don't consider themselves creative because they're like, well, like I like to mend clothes. And I'm like, that's creative. That takes that part of your brain to like problem solve and do these things. But they wouldn't call themselves like, I'm not an artist. That's, like, that's still an art form. It's like, there's an art form to a lot of things. Cooking.
Yeah.
People are, you know, chefs, and they're like, well, I'm not really an artist. I'm like, well, that's an art form.
Yeah, or even,
that's a skill. That's an art form. That's like
you put on clothes, don't you? Well, that's fashion.
Yeah, like everyone has like a sense.
However,
I mean, I guess there are some people that just don't
care,
don't have any, or don't care.
Yeah, whatever.
But I think it's like kind of how you're raised. Like some people get that just kind of pushed out of them, you know?
Yeah.
Because they were pushed out of them. They were a kid, and
they're like, be practical.
You're like, be practical. Sports, you know, you need to play sports your entire life. And then I'm like, which I played baseball up until I was high school, but after that, when I was ready to be done with it, it wasn't like a thing. It was like, okay.
Yeah.
It was like, cool. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy it, then there's no reason for you to do it.
Yeah.
So, and we're not going to waste the money on it, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I love and appreciate so many different forms of creativeness, and like, I just love learning new techniques. Like I said, like welding, like I would love to learn, like I kind of know how to sew a little bit just because I just need to learn for a few things, but very basic stuff. But if I had the time, I would sit down and like, I would love to learn how to make my own suits.
Yeah.
You know, just stuff like I just love learning things, and there's so many techniques that kind of intertwine with other things, and that's how you get really creative pieces and unique stuff, is because you take sewing and you put it with welding, and then you make a piece of something else, and it's like, oh, I've never seen that done before. And it's because, yeah, well, I just like these two things, and so I made it work together. There's so many skills that just, I don't know, work across the board with other things. And just perspective wise too, to see things from a different perspective. Yeah.
So now, how do you develop your artistic skills? Do you have like routines? What is your process like?
Well, for miniatures, I don't know. It's like, you know, miniatures is like, it's still a pretty niche thing, but it's like under that umbrella, there's so many different things too. You know, I'll go from building this build, you know, like a facade of a building is supposed to look realistic for someone. And then the next day or the next week, I'll go and I'll be like, okay, well, I'm going to like make a larger scale of this piece of furniture, this really nice, intricate piece of furniture. And they're completely different things, you know, completely different techniques in problem solving. And I love the uniqueness of both of those things and how they are independent of each other. Like, they're not the same. The only thing they have in common is that they're not real size, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, completely different techniques. So I think doing that, jumping around, is kind of, at least for me, it helps my brain kind of get out of a certain point of view and look at it a different way. But yeah, I don't know. And just doing it, you know, and it's the trial and error of things. You know, I mean, there's tons of stuff that I spend 6 hours on, and I look at it, I'm like, I can't use this. Like, this isn't the right scale. Like, this is too big to go onto this model.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I think the difference in a lot of people is like, do you use this piece that's obviously not working to your eye? You use it, and then you get that, you know, this is done, versus like taking the time and maybe writing down the steps of how you did this. So, you know, next time, you know, to not make the same mistake or not cut a corner. Or I make a lot of templates for things now, and I write a lot of notes. Like, especially like painting techniques, if I'm trying to recreate like a stone that's a certain color, you know, I'll do tests with it first, and I'll make notes of like the colors I use and like the undercolors and the highlights and all that stuff. That way, because I'll forget it as soon as I'm done with it. I'll just move past it and do something else. So I'll usually like write it down and like put it in a little notebook so I can like reference, like, oh, these are the colors I used for this brick wall that I really liked. It turned out really nicely. So I'd like, but if I don't write those 5 colors down that I used, I'll never remember. So it's always like I'm chasing that. So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of note taking and template making, just like notes to my future self, basically.
Right.
That way it's less I have to keep up top.
Yeah, when you're saying you draw things or create things to scale, it really, like, I mean, you have to do a lot of math of like, okay, it's this big now, how to make this small.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a lot of that. It's a lot of work on the front end before even like, sometimes you just kind of jump in and get started. Like, especially if you've been doing it a while, you kind of know roughly what, you're working with. But sometimes it's like, I have to sit down for a few hours and like reference and like pull up images, all the images I can find of something, and like different angles, and see how different things. I mean, a lot of times the images, you're only seeing it from one point of view, so it's like, okay, I see it this way, I get it's this wide, but how deep is it? Because when I make it, I can't just make it flat, it has to be deep too. I'm not painting it, so I have to find all these angles, and I have to think about like, well, even if I can't find a photo, I have to be like, well, I have to think about like, how would this practically be made? Like, if I were building this structure, how would it be made in real life? And that a lot of times helps to build it small, because
yeah, like for instance, if you were to like create this
Yeah.
and a table, would you measure this and then like, I don't know, even if you weren't using this table, what would you do? Measure the table and then relation size?
I would probably, it depends. Like, the internet's great. You can find measurements for anything, mostly, especially like item wise. Like, if I'm building a coffee maker, I can go on, Amazon and look at the specs and be like, cool, it's 24 inches tall. Sweet. I know how to measure that. I know how to scale that down. That's easy. But it's like the parts that like furniture is a good one. Like, I made a chair a few days ago, and like, you can find images on it, but there's only so much an image can tell you, like, because you can't it's not a 3D model. You can't touch it. You can't flip it. It's like you have to kind of guesstimate. Like, you can see 75% of it, but it's that 25% that you can't see. Like, how does that work? Like, how do these things meet together? But like, for instance, if I were going to build this, I would probably, figure out the table first, right? Because if your table's not the right size table, it's either a coffee table, or if it's too tall, then it doesn't look right.
Right.
And say if I didn't have any measurements for anything else, I would figure out the table, and then I would make everything else in relation to the size of the table, just kind of eyeballing it. And I usually do, for a lot of things now, I'll do like little maquettes or like mock-ups out of foam or paper, especially when I do stuff for film, because it's so much, it takes a little bit of time, but it's like, I've built so many things now where I've finished them and they're not the right size, or they don't work in camera with something else. And I'm like, I wish I had taken the time to make a cheap paper version of this, or like out of foam. It doesn't have to look good. It just has to be a block. Like I need a mountain in the distance. How big do I have to make it to fit in this space? And like, it's much better to just cut a piece out of like foam and put it back there and be like, cool, that works for size, and then make the real one, versus like, I'm just going to go right into making the real one and spend 10 hours on it and then put it in and hope it's the right size.
Yeah.
It's like a placeholder kind of thing.
You save yourself so much time.
Yeah. It's like, even like if you're in the studio cutting, like, say if you're cutting like a drum track and you don't use a click, and you're like, that's cool, I'll just go in and put the drums in and like let the music, like they just play what they're like, let the bass player go and let him play, and then not put a click in. So like, you go in and then he's all out of time, and you're trying to like play with something that's out of time, when you could have just put the click in temporary and had him go off that as a, like a bass line or whatever.
Right.
It's just so much easier. It's just like one extra little step that saves you so many future steps. Or so I've really implemented that. And I feel like that's been a thing forever. Furniture designers, automotive design, they've always started with a small version that they can like see in a space,
Yeah.
and see how it looks and how it works. So it's just so much easier to do that one little step.
Yeah.
And not waste 12 hours.
Right.
And have to do something again.
Yeah. It is good to fail in that way.
Yeah, but it's like, that's the only reason I know to do that.
Now I know what I'll be punishing myself.
Yeah, I've failed so many times doing that. And it's like, and there's still times where I'm like, I think I know what I'm doing, and I'll do it. I'm like, I know I should have done this. I know I should have taken this one extra
step. A little
step
slap on the wrist.
I messed up. And they're like, you can't be mad.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I knew it. And I was like, no, I knew it.
I had to learn the hard way.
I learned the hard way.
Sweet. So when you're making your little miniatures, what kind of tools are you using?
Oh man, so many things. I mean, you only need a certain few things. I think. Like, I feel like I've had a couple people reach out to me before and be like, I really want to start making miniatures. How do I get started? Or like, what do I need? And I was like, honestly, the fact that you just want to try it is like the biggest tool you need. The desire to try. But I would say the standards, if anyone were going to go out and start making anything, you need some kind of glue or tape even. I would recommend like a glue, but maybe not super glue. That's very unforgiving.
Yeah.
Hot glue is great.
Yeah.
Because it's cheap.
Yeah.
I would say cheap materials for starting off is what you need. You need, cardboard, paper, whatever that's cheap that you can find in like recycling that you just toss. So if you mess it up, you just find another piece and use it. There's no overhead. A straight edge, some kind of hobby knife, like an X-Acto blade, or there's so many different styles too. So once you get into doing it and you're comfortable with what you're doing, then you can really hone in on what you need. But man, for me, I mean, I use so many things. I use all those, so many different kinds of straight edges and squares and jigs that I make myself. I have a full-size table saw, a full-size chop saw. I have a miniature table saw and like scroll saw and chop saw. Like, they're small, but they're like precision. I have custom jigs that I've made for those.
What are jigs?
Jigs are like basically, say if I were gonna, I don't know how to describe it. If I need to make a bunch of table legs, I need to make them the same way, and they're like a weird angle. I can make a jig that holds your piece of wood at an angle or something, and you can just cut it that way, and you can make just repeats. So many of like, almost if you're gonna like take a casting of something in a mold, the casting would be like how to replicate this one thing. It's like you spend the time to make this one. I guess it's like a substitute.
Stencil?
It's almost like a stencil, or like something that will hold a piece of something else, like a template almost. Or, I mean, it's like a secondary tool for your main tool, But it's endless, of what you can. You just have to like think of how to engineer something that can benefit you on this one tool that's supposed to cut straight, but you need to cut it a little bit of an angle, and you need to cut it like 15 times. I got to figure out how to make something that can hold a piece of wood that will slide straight, but slide at an angle and give me that cut that I need when this tool is not set up for it. It's like an accessory almost to a tool.
Oh, okay.
I guess, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So, do you have any, like, who are your like favorite artists of all time?
Oh man, I don't know. I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, not coming from an artist heavy world, I feel like I don't have any like main artists that I
like other famous miniature artists that you like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because a lot of miniature artists that work on like all the Star Wars, like those guys are amazing. And even like what they do for like what they did for Lord of the Rings, or like Harry Potter, like Hogwarts castles all in miniature. Fifth Element, like all these, but a lot of those artists, those miniature artists, kind of go under the radar, especially for those films. But I didn't grow up with like a lot of artists, like I didn't go to art school like a lot of people do in like art history. So obviously like the classics, you know, Renaissance painters and stuff like that, or, you know, some of the mid-century artists and painters are great, but I wouldn't say I inspired heavily from their particular works. It's just, I think design in general inspires me so much, even if it's not something that I do. Like I'm so inspired by seeing, it's honestly seeing people that don't do what I do, like people who build vehicles from scratch. Like they build the frame, they drop an engine in, and they build the car out of, you know, sheet metal, and they form it all. Like I can't do that. I understand what they're doing. I don't do that, and that inspires me. It makes me want to create my stuff so much more, you know. And like people who do abstract artists, like I appreciate it so much because I can't do it. My brain is too analytical to do abstract art, you know. Like I've tried to, like, I'm gonna make an abstract sculpture of something, say a dinosaur, whatever. Like I'm gonna make an abstract sculpture of a dinosaur. It would turn into a sculpture of like a realistic sculpture of a dinosaur. Like I would, because my brain doesn't. I'm too, like when I look at things, I see the corners and the details and like what makes it look real, and that's how I view everything. And I think that's why I like doing miniatures, because like it's the detail work.
Yeah.
My brain can't like stop at it. Like, oh, it's the shape, and I'm like, I'm gonna put an eye over here and then an eye over here. My brain's like, no, it has to go this way. This is how it has to match the real version.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to like wrap my mind around.
Precision.
Yes, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around like abstract things, but I love them because I can't. That's one thing I can't do. As much as I could try to do it, it would just get farther and farther away from me, because I feel like that's something you capture in a feeling almost more so, and that's not how I'm able to work.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I build a film set, like if I'm doing the concept art for it, like if I'm building the set, if I'm designing it, then I draw it out and I get the go ahead, you know, from like the directors or whoever is, you know, in charge. And then I'm like, cool, I'm going to build this exactly like my drawing. And that's how my brain works.
Yeah.
When some people are they take a block of clay and they're just like, I'm going to sculpt this nice organic thing. And I'm like, I can't do that. I'm like, I would never get to something that I could like not, that I'd like, it's finished. You know, I would keep whittling it down till it was like a very exact replica of something.
Yeah.
You know, I just can't, but I appreciate it so much. And I think it's because I can't do it. You know, my brain would never conceive this.
Like if you were going to draw a smiley face, everything would be like,
it would be a smiley. It would, yeah.
It wouldn't be like,
it's like if someone's like, do your interpretation of a smiley face. And I'd be like, well, my interpretation is a literal smiley face that you would see. Like when an abstract artist would be like, okay, I can see a smiley face, and it's, you know, it's all organic and flowing and like doesn't necessarily make sense, but it does in a way. Like I can view it that way, but I can never come to that like culmination of ideas to make it look like that. It would just be a smiley face.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've never been able to do that.
The analytical.
And I think it's like that's how that's how my brain works. Yeah. So that's why I respect it so much. Is like I could never.
I feel that.
And it's not something you can learn. You know, that's the thing, because you can learn anything. People can learn how to do miniatures, and it's like I can't learn how to, like, turn that part of my brain off to like let myself do this.
It's like if you were to scribble on paper, it would be a pretty like intended.
Yeah.
A lot of intention.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of intention. It would be a blueprint of something that I need to design, and like it might look like scribble or like abstract, but it wouldn't be intentional. It'd be the lack of, like, I keep sketchbooks on me, or like notepads on me all the time, because I like sit down to eat breakfast at a place or get a coffee, and I'm like, while I'm waiting, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna work through this idea very loosely. So it's like just lines on top of lines and like maybe like little numbers and arrows, but it's like someone sees it, they're like, I don't know what this is. Doesn't make any sense. But like, it's just my like very loose plans for something. It's an intentionally loose thing because it doesn't have to mean anything. Versus like if I'm sitting down to make a sculpture that's very moving, like I can't. Like it'll turn into like, here's a car. Like I can't do it.
Yeah.
So
I feel that's awesome that you have the self-awareness to understand the analytical side of yourself. I'm also very analytical, so it's like that. But using that in your art, like a lot of people think, well, I'm just a numbers person. It's like, well, you use that in art.
Yeah. That's. I think that's one reason I do enjoy miniatures. I love the details and the scale and like the eyeing something to know when it's not right or when it is right or when it's like just slightly too large. And that's one thing that I feel like I am inherently good at is the eyeing things.
Yeah.
Or like, that's so far, that's 25 feet away. And then like, I feel like my brain works well that way of like the perception of
the
things.
Zeroing in.
Yeah.
The optics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or just, I don't know. So, but the other side is like, oh, I'm just going to be very free with this and make this thing. And it's going to be great. It's going to be moving, in a sense of feeling, not a sense of like kinetic, but like I can't, like I couldn't, like you need to make a sculpture of a dog, but it needs to be abstract. Like, I couldn't do it. It would just be a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel you.
So, but I do appreciate abstract artists and painters and like, it's great.
Yeah. So what kind of materials do you use when you build? Like, the main ones?
Really everything. I'm always experimenting with different things and techniques. The main ones, I would say, I use a lot of softwoods, like not like balsa is too soft. Balsa is like basically just like brittle paper, right. But like basswood, or however you want to say it. It's like
balsa wood, or no,
it's balsa. It's like the step above like balsa wood, but softer than like pine or something. Like it's still wood, but it's soft. So I use a lot of that, and you can get that in like different dimensions, like you would like regular lumber, but it's small. I do a lot of that. I use a lot of styrene sheeting, like plastic, and I'll try to recycle some plastic if I have some, especially like clear plastic. I'll use like, oh, you got like a package of something, like I'm gonna scrap that and then like make it useful. So like plastic and styrene I'll use. I try to look at, when I'm building something, I try to use, if this building's made out of wood, like I try to build it out of wood, because that's how you get the natural texture. It's the same, it's just small. Like if I build furniture, like 1/12 scale, like dollhouse scale furniture, I will build it out of the same materials if I can, because it's the same. You're not faking, you're not putting like now I need to paint it to make it look like wood. It's like, oh, it is wood. You just finish it the same way you would a large one. But sometimes like bricks and stuff, I could sculpt little clay bricks or like fire like little tiny bricks, I guess. But a lot of times if I'm doing a building and it's a small scale building, I'll use like XPS foam. It's like the foam, those pink foam boards, like pretty dense, like you use for like insulation. You know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Yeah. I'll use that because you can carve it, really well. And then you have to paint it to look like bricks and stuff. But yeah, man, just anything. But I mean, everything from different types of metals, hardwoods, paper, cardstock, cardboard. Not a lot of cardboard, but cardstock I'll use. All sorts of glues and adhesives, different paints, airbrushing, all sorts of different like cutting tools. And yeah, man, it's just like you can get by with very little, but it's like once you know what you're doing and the best way to achieve something, it's like trying a new tool or investing in the tool that works the best is like the game changer. It's like I could sit here and cut all these things by hand and try to get them very square, or I could buy this like little tiny saw, this little chop saw that like you can dial in really tight, you know, and then like put a little thing in like a stopper so you get the exact same cut and you can do it 45 times very accurately, you know, versus like taking 6 hours and trying to get them all very perfect.
Yeah.
This little thing will do it for you. But yeah.
Okay.
So many things. So many just like random little tools.
Nice.
Yeah.
What is the largest miniature model you've ever built?
The largest? Oh man. Let me think. I've had a few kind of large. I mean, nothing like too crazy. I built last summer Donaldson Bowl.
Nice.
You know, it closed down, I guess, like last May, but maybe this past May. I don't know how long it's been. But they were closing it down. I was like, this is going to get knocked down soon, probably. Like, I need to get out there, and I just want to take some photos of it so I have them, so I can maybe build it in the future. I try, especially around town, like I try to, if something's going to be, it's been a staple for years and it's getting torn down, I like to try to capture or at least have the information backed up so where if I need to go back and build it, I can. So I went out there to take photos of it and took my photos, and it took some like kind of rough measurements. And then I was like, this is too big. I was like, this is going to be like, I think it was like 4 or 5 feet long.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't very tall, but it's just really long because I was building the front of it, you know, it's a bowling alley. And I was like, this is crazy. I was like, I don't have anywhere to build this. Like, I don't have the space to like keep this if I don't have anybody to sell it to. Like, just put it on my wall. It's 6 feet long. And so, but I was like, you know what? I kind of like how big it is. So I am going to build it. Then I ended up having like an art exhibit that I put it in, and it did sell, which was great because I was like, I don't have a place for this otherwise. But so that was pretty big. That was like 6 feet long. Granted, it was only like, you know, 10 inches high at the highest point. It was pretty long. But I've made some pretty large pieces for like movies and stuff that just necessary. I mean, it was just necessary. They were still the small scale, but like been working on this film for a few years now with these guys in Texas, and it's a monster, like a horror movie, kind of like an 80s monster movie. But we needed an exterior of like an old news studio, kind of like a mid-century with like the rounded corners and like, you know, light up letters on the top of it. And that doesn't really, they're hard. I mean, to find something that you really are happy with for film to be like a character in a movie is hard to find in real life. And it's especially if you need to fix it up to make it look old. So I was like, we can just build one. We can make a miniature one, you know, and we can make it however we want it to look. And so we did that. And, you know, I think it ended up like 4 or 5 feet long, but it was also like this deep and like this tall. And, you know, you've got like some grass and like a little parking lot. And then you shoot it, you know, on like a green screen or like a black backdrop, add some lights, you know, kind of out of the shot. And it looks like, you know, a regular weird like thing, you know. And that's what I love doing the most is like stuff for film. Because it's like
a little world. Yeah,
it's like Star Wars. It was like all these miniatures, like they made them to be shot from this direction and they designed it. We have full creative power. Like we'll design it how we want it to look, and we light it how we want it to, you know, be lit, and then that creates this world that you assume watching it as a kid, or how like, oh, those characters are inside there.
Yeah,
they're inside that cantina, you know, and you're like, no, like this was just a miniature that someone built in a garage, and they shot it with a camera, and like that's I don't know, that's part of the magic of doing it, and that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah, dude, what is your dream model to build?
Man, I don't know. Like it's kind of endless.
Build like the Death Star or something.
Death Star would be cool. I also love like have you ever seen like the Helm's Deep?
Oh yeah.
Have you seen those sets, like the miniature ones that they shot?
Dude.
Like that stuff.
Full
like full like scapes. Like it takes a room and then like it's like
Dude, yeah.
It's huge. I mean, they're miniatures. They're such small scale, but it's like they're so big and elaborate.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, or like the Rivendell sets and stuff.
Hell
or like, have you seen the behind the scenes like shots of like Blade Runner, of course, the original and the reboot of it, the 2049. They did it's full rooms of miniatures, and then they had motion control cameras that like went through them, and like they added some like fog and like atmosphere to it, and lit it, and it's like, oh, it looks like this crazy cityscape, and it's all miniatures. And it's all practically lit with little LEDs and fiber optics and all this stuff. And it's like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's the stuff I really love.
Yeah.
And that I love doing private commissions for people, like, oh, this was someone's, like, for instance, a couple years ago, I had someone in Turkey reach out, and I guess their father had passed away, but their father had this sitting chair, just a regular like wingback chair, nothing too crazy. That was in their house, and it was his favorite chair. It was a sitting chair, and I guess the fabric on it had kind of been deteriorated, and they were going to get it reupholstered. But he reached out and he was like, "Is there any way you could make a model of this chair, and I will send you a big swatch of fabric from the chair?" So I made the chair like at a 1/6 scale. So it was like this big, I guess, because it kind of needed to be for that. But he wanted to use the fabric from the real chair on the model of the chair, which was a challenge because the fabric's a completely different scale. You got these big stripes so it was a challenge, but I think it worked out pretty well. And he was like, the sentimental part of that too is so nice when it really means something to the client, where it's like, oh, you're capturing a memory of someone that like it's real, like you're gonna put on a shelf, and it's like you're gonna cherish this thing, and like that is very special, Yeah. But at the same time, I love working like in films where it's like we're gonna create a world that no one's seen, and I think it's too because I have so many memories attached of like watching movies like that, where it's like these huge, elaborate world, and that's why I watch movies.
Yeah, the worlds you get to go to.
Yeah, like I don't like, I don't know, I like weird shit and sci-fi stuff, and I don't care about like true crime or like police dramas, and I'm just like, man, like I want to watch something weird, like bizarre that doesn't exist, and if it does exist, it like exists in a different time period or place, like, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, what would you say? I mean, you've kind of already been talking about this. What would you say inspires your creativity?
I think seeing other creative people. I think just really, if it weren't for other creative people, I don't think I would feel as creative, if that makes any sense. I don't know, like, Instagram is whatever it is now, but like, it's such a platform to see other creative people, and I feel like now the people that I really pay attention to, if I'm on like social media, it's like I'm paying attention to other creatives and I'm following other creatives, whether or not they do what I do, in any world, like interior design, like architectural Instagram. Like I love seeing the shapes and the colors and the palettes and the lines of things. Like if you look at modern vehicles versus vehicles from the 50s or the 40s, 30s, like the design, there used to be so much more creative input, I feel like, that went into those vehicles, like the lines. Like if you look like an old Corvette from the 50s, like it looks so much better than I think a modern Corvette looks. Like they like, I don't know, and that's what I love seeing. I love the uniqueness of the different creative, you can have two people who do fashion, but completely different takes on fashion, and like seeing the differences in those as a bystander to someone who isn't interested in doing what they're doing, is inspiring.
Yeah.
Because I can appreciate so much more.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What would you say your art represents?
A lot of it's just like nostalgia, I think. I feel like 2 years ago I wouldn't know how to answer that so much, but I think at this point I'm drawn to making things that I remember, that those kind of distant memories, that you have, like of being a kid and seeing this thing, or I don't know. It's the things that don't necessarily exist anymore that you can't, like kind of same as a photograph.
Yeah.
Like if you had an old building that you grew up in,
Blockbuster.
and like Blockbuster, like seeing a photo of one, like, or the inside of one, you'd be like, oh, I can taste, I can smell this. I know what this feels like. And with miniatures, you can recreate that. You can recreate that space almost. And I think that's a big thing for me, is recreating. Like I said earlier with like the action figures, like if I see one out in the wild for sale, I'm like, I'm going to buy it, because it's gaining a little bit of that, I guess, like your kind of inner child.
Yeah.
Like you gain a little bit of that back. If you lost it, you're like, oh, here's a little tiny piece that I get to take back with me.
Yeah.
And I feel like the miniatures a lot of times are that for people, and for commissions. Like when I get commissions, it's because someone has a memory attached to a place.
Yeah.
Whether it be a sign of a bar or a restaurant, or like the front of someone's home, like they have memories attached to that place, and that's why it's important to them.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, that's a cool building, I'm going to make it, which is fun. It's a good exercise, but it's like when you get to do, sentimental stuff that people are really attached to. Like, oh, like I had that TV. Like I remember sitting in front of that TV and playing video games on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I love your summer '96.
Yeah, all those like little things that I did. That's so much, because like they're all pulled from moments. If they're not a real place, they're pulled from like a time when this one thing was very important. I did one with like a little Razor scooter and a little plywood ramp a few years ago that I just I think I raffled it off or something. But I was like, this is just like, this is what I did as a kid, like setting up shitty little junk ramps and like trying to like jump them with a scooter or something. Like I had this scooter, like, and so that's
super soaker.
Yeah, a super soaker I did. Like I had that super soaker, and it's like just checking off those things. I think as from when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I remember I had this thing, I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool. Like it's like a little bit of closure, I think, of like from growing up. It's like, cool, I can let this go now. Like I relived this, and whoever gets it, maybe they had that same. I think the person that ended up getting both of those things were like, oh, I had this. And that's why I want it, because I'm going to be able to see it and be able to like experience it again in a different way.
Yeah.
But,
so, how would you best describe the type of artist you are?
As like as a category, like.
No, just like how would you,
I don't know. I've only like recently even started calling myself an artist, I guess. But I don't know. I'm not good with.
You said nostalgia.
I like nostalgia, but maybe that's the best word for it. But I mean, there's also like the stuff of doing film, and making these worlds. But like that also stems from, I think, nostalgia deep down. Just from watching these fantastical worlds.
Vicariousness.
Yeah, it's like, So I don't know. That's something I'll work on, is describing my artistic.
I guess you would say multidisciplinary.
Yeah, I feel like maybe so, but
nostalgic.
Yeah, miniature artist, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of adjectives in there, but
I mean, your life,
Yeah, and it's going to change. I'm
however
sure.
many adjectives it takes.
I'll eventually not be interested in doing miniatures anymore. And like, cool. I'm like, oh, I did that for 15 years. Like, I'm bored with it. Let's try something else. You know, like I love furniture design. I love, maybe not, like I would say contemporary furniture, like kind of the mid-century, or like anything between early 1900s and 1960s, maybe 70s and 80s. But like, I love it. I love seeing it. And like, one day, hopefully I'll have the space to be able to like, oh, here's like this one-off table that I made, you know? And I love that. And that's why a lot of times what I do, I'll build real miniature furniture. And it's because it's like, I can scratch that itch, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of. But I think the big thing is like, obviously too, like being a full-time artist, like trying to be self-sustained as an artist, like has its, you know, cons, because, you know, you got to think about, unfortunately, like monetary and like how to stay afloat, you know, and what prioritizing, like what stuff you need to work on at a certain time. I think it's good, and I'm still working with this, is like knowing when you need to take time to like do something you really are interested in and developing new skills. So I think that's important for anybody, whether it be you're a musician or like, you know, you're an interior designer. It's like you need to take those times to step away and like let your brain do something else for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can, when you
palate cleanser.
Yeah, because when you come back, you're going to look at it in a whole new way. That's why you don't eat the same food every day. You got to have different food, you know, so you can appreciate the other stuff when you get back to it.
Yeah.
But
that's a good point. So what would you say are your strengths and weaknesses as an artist?
As an artist, I would say I'm not an artist. I mean, I don't mean that in like a good way, a positive way, or a negative way. It's just like, I know so many people who are an artist, they go to gallery openings and exhibits, and they really connect with people, and they live that life, which is great. And I'm just not good at it. I'm not good at going to different gallery openings and like interfacing with, like, I'm good with people, but I'm not out there presenting myself as an artist so much. And I think that's just something that comes probably with, I've been doing miniatures and doing film stuff for quite a while, but it's never been like the forefront of who, I am. So I'm still getting used to the idea of like presenting myself as an artist, I think. Or I don't know if it's like modesty of like, I'm an artist, I guess, but like still learning how to do that. And I think there's people out there who do it, and they do it well. And I think I'm going to get better at doing that. So, I don't know.
And your strengths?
I don't know. I think if you're going to do something, you should do it well. You should do it wholeheartedly. I think that's a big one. I think you have to value yourself and your time, which I've gotten better at. And that's just, that's a learning thing too. Like, you just have to learn. Yeah, I don't know. And I think the dedication of doing something too is a big one. And that, I guess, goes along with like, if you're going to do something, do it well. Don't do it half-assed twice. Do it whole-assed once.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. And I think being good with people and knowing most of the time how to communicate, and if you're going to do something, follow through with it is a big thing. I've learned to, like, if there's something that I don't really want to do, then I've learned to not say yes to it. I've learned to say no is a huge one, I think. I think there's been a couple projects that people have reached out to me about, and it's not in my wheelhouse so much. And it's like, whereas 10 years ago I'd been like, okay, I'll try to figure it out and then deliver like a product I'm not happy with, or a piece of art that I'm not happy with. And I think that's, you try your best, but if at the end of the day you're not happy with it and it goes out to live its life or do whatever it's going to do, then if you're not happy with it, you shouldn't put it out. You shouldn't promote that. And there's been a couple times where I've had to, unfortunately, just turn down things because I was like, this is not what I do, but I can direct you to somebody who might be able to do it better. And I think that's a huge thing, because you don't carry the stress. It kind of sucks losing a job or like losing a commission or a bid on something, but it's like, if you were to take it, kind of do it, not half-assed because you're trying your hardest, but it's like, it's not what you want it to be. And it's like, you have to deal with that stress. At least I do. Like, I have to live with that fact that I'm putting something out there that I'm not 100% with.
Yeah.
And someone's receiving that and they're paying for it. And it's like, I don't feel comfortable. Like, if I did that situation and I wasn't happy with it, I wouldn't charge a person for it. And I don't want to have to go through that. So it's like, I think the learning to when to say no is a big one, but it also coincides with like saying yes to things. Like, you also have to know when it's okay to say yes to try something new, but also know when it's like, you need to say no. And if you're too busy, just say no, like, there's no reason in getting stressed out living with that.
Right.
Because it's gonna reflect on the rest of your work and your life, your relationship. So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, you can say no for now, but if that changes, I'll let you know.
Yeah, but like, I've had things that are so last minute, and it's like, I could use the job, but at the same time, it's not enough time to perform what needs, like, the 100% that I need to give it. And so it's like, maybe reach out later if you have more time.
Right.
So, but that just comes from learning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the failing and trying, and you have to go through to get to that point. But I think when it clicks, it's like, cool. Like, I'm glad I unlocked that particular skill set of like saying yes and no, and knowing when, and your self-worth and value, and
your limits,
and knowing your limits. And it also, if you know your limits, it gives you something to work towards. Like, if you're like, I can't do that. Like, I need this person's face sculpted really well. I'm like, oh, that's not me. But that does make me aware that that's something I should probably work on when I have time.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Nashville now?
I've lived in Nashville since 2011, 2012. But I grew up in Nashville. My parents, when I was when I was born, both of my parents worked downtown.
What has like brought you here?
I think just getting out of the town that I grew up in. Yeah. It's a small town. I mean, it's grown a lot, but I don't know. I think that was the move, and I think as a creative person, I think they're like, cool. There's not the same opportunities here in this tiny small town that there are in like maybe potentially bigger city, and friends. Like, I had friends that they're like, oh, they went to school, at MTSU and stuff, and they moved back to town, but they didn't move back to Nashville. They didn't move back to Springfield. So I was like, well, it just makes sense. And I grew up going there, and I didn't necessarily fit in with the people in Springfield. It's a very
small town.
It's a small town. It's very agriculture driven, and like that. Although I did grow up working on a farm and like doing all this, like, that wasn't me.
Right.
That was a job that I didn't really want to do, but I did it. And so I think that was just the natural move, was to move to another place. And Nashville was only 40 minutes away, and I had a kid brother, so I was like, I didn't want to move too far. I didn't want to move to the West Coast and like not see him grow up.
Yeah,
because he was how old? He's 21. He's 19. He's 20. He just turned 20.
Wow.
Yeah,
he is a
I
kid
was
brother.
I was 15 when he was born.
Wow.
So yeah, he's kid brother. So my whole 20s, he was small. So like growing up, I was like, I don't want to move too far away. But so Nashville made sense. And I probably won't be in Nashville for that much longer. I'll probably move away at some point, maybe come back. But
Where do you think you'll move?
we want to move to the West Coast, Pacific Northwest.
Nice.
Portland or somewhere up there.
Awesome.
I love it up there.
What would you say you've learned living here?
In Nashville?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a cool town. It's a small city. It's a small town. Like, for as big as it's gotten, it's a very small town. Like I said, I used to work in restaurants and I bartended for a decade, and it's just everywhere you go. As a bartender working, like you see the same people. It's still just a small town for how large it is. How many people's here now? It's like, I don't know, but it hasn't taught me patience at all. I will say, the driving, the terrible driving in the city now has not made me a patient person. I don't know. I guess it's taught me, despite what's kind of going on around you, there's still it's still a close knit, family of people. If you're available to that.
Okay. Do you have a favorite venue here?
Music venue?
Yeah.
Let me think. I used to go to so many shows. Like I feel like that was like my 20s was just like show after show. Man, I love the smaller intimate venues. Like I really love like the basement. Unfortunately, the Exit In isn't the same. Exit In was great. I used to go to house shows in Murfreesboro when I lived up there for like 6 months, and like house shows were like the thing to do, which I don't think I could enjoy a house show anymore.
Yeah.
I think I'm too crotchety now for that. I like my space and like to be alone, and like I can't do a house show anymore. I don't think. Maybe, I don't know. But no, I really like. Unfortunately, like a lot of the venues that just don't exist anymore. But Dark Matter is great. I would say Dark Matter's up there. It still is that DIY venue kind of scenario, and it's just like you can't chase. That's like a thing a lot of places are chasing, is like the DIY venue. Like they want it to feel like a DIY venue, and it's like that's not something you can like create. It's like it has to be the DIY venue. Like that's what makes it.
Right.
You introduce a bunch of money into it, and it's like
corrupts it.
It's corrupt, and it's like, yeah, you can't do that. You can't, and that's what I miss. I miss like old like Mercy Lounge and Cannery Row and all that.
Yeah. What about the End?
The End is great. I've seen a lot of good shows at the End. That place hasn't changed, and I don't know how. I don't know how it's still there. Like, doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm glad it is still there. But yeah, man.
Do you have a favorite food here?
Like restaurant wise?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm all over the place. Been trying to cook a lot past couple years at the house, so there's plenty of places that have opened that I just haven't been to yet that have been open for like 2 years. But
for the steady choices,
man, we eat like locally to the house, and we like, we kind of live in the same area, but I mean, we love Mexican food and Cinco de Mayo, like, the one on Woodland now, but like I've been going to Cinco for 14 years in like different locations around town, and it's all the same, and it's always great. And so we love that. I used to be way more into food and like being a foodie, but I don't know, man.
okay,
that's another one I would just have to think on, because there's so many different. It's like asking like, what's your favorite band or movie? Like there's no way I could ever.
I guess not your favorite, but several ones you like
Of
restaurants.
Man. All right. Butcher and Bee is great. I'm a little biased because I used to work there, but like their food still holds up. These are all probably going to be like in East Nashville for the most part. But man, let's see. I'm trying not to say like the most notable ones. Like Locust is great, obviously. No one needs me to say that. That's like they're like winning awards and shit. But like, um, man, Good Burger is always solid. So like Bad Luck Burger. You haven't been there, you should go. That's a
Bad Luck Burger.
Bad Luck Burger. They do like food trucks. They got a food truck. They got their mobile one now, and they've got their permanent food truck at Honeymead Meadery on Woodland Street. So if you haven't been there, you should go.
Okay, cool.
Well, that's a great burger, and it's like that's what they do. That's all they do is just their burger, and it's great.
Nice.
Yeah, they're killing it.
So, what is some advice you'd give to someone who's going to move here and do art?
Do art like as an artist or like a musician? Anything. I think. I don't think it has to do with Nashville, but I think it's like if you desire to do art and be creative of any sort in any city, it's just do it. Just do it however you want to do it, or wherever you do, just do it, but also do it to the best of your ability, you know, and just don't be afraid to try it. If it doesn't work out, you can always go work in a restaurant, you know, especially in the city.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think people get hung up a lot of times on the just worrying and the being afraid to change or afraid to try something new because they don't know if they're good at it. But I think if you got that like desire to create whatever it may be, obviously in Nashville music's a little tougher. It's a little more saturated. But I think if you're really passionate about it, do it, you know, and try. And you also got to get out. You got to meet people, I think, which I'm not great about. I'm not great about getting out and meeting people. But I think that's still important. But granted, I'm from here kind of, so like I already know people. I'm kind of like grandfathered in with people and working in restaurants and bars. Like I just know a lot of people. Not that I'm necessarily close to them, but I do know them. So that helped me. But I think for a person moving to any city, doing whatever they do, they need to get out and just try to be social, even if it's from a distance, just to like introduce themselves. But I think the biggest thing is just whatever you want to do, you know, in that way, just do it and try it. Because you're never gonna, even if you don't like it, you can stop doing it. But if you never try, then you're never gonna know.
Right.
You know, you're not gonna know if it works or not, and you're gonna have to live with that. You know, we're like, I never tried. I never moved to the city to be an architect that's what my dream was, and now I'm 65 years old, and it's definitely too late to become an architect in the city, and I'll have to live. You have to live with that your entire life of like what if, you know?
Yeah.
So if it doesn't work, you know, that's fine. At least you know.
Yeah.
There's no shame in failing.
Right. Okay. So reflecting back on when you first started as an artist and all that you've done, what is one of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome, and how did you get through it?
As far as like doing miniatures or anything
at all.
I think a lot of it's like the self-worth. I think that's the biggest. How to just like to know when you feel comfortable enough with your work and yourself to like say no, or to like, this is what this is for you to put your input into something, for it to be yours versus someone else's idea. I think is a big thing to learn. Like, cool, like you want this thing exactly like this, but this is what I do, and this is how I'm going to make it. And you have to learn how to be confident and assertive enough with your work to like put that forward, because at the end of the day, it's your work and it's your brand almost. And it's like, if you put something out that's someone else's idea or someone else's like actual concept, and it's like, if you're recreating someone else's work for whatever reason, like that's not your work. That's theirs. And you're just copying it, or not copying it, but you know what I'm saying? So it's like just learning when, like, I think if you're a drummer and this is your drumming style, right? And this is like, this is what you believed in, this is what you did. Or if you were a songwriter and you only did Americana, like, you know, acoustic stuff, finger picking, whatever, and someone comes along, they're like, that's cool, but like, do this instead. Like, yeah, you could learn it and do it and whatever, put something out, but like, that's still your name that's on it. And now you do kind of these things, but like, if this is what you want to do, then you stick with it. And you're like, I'll play it, but I'm going to play it this way.
Yeah.
And it's going to be good because this is what I do. And I know it's going to be good. And you're going to be happy with it, but you got to give me the grace to do it how you want to do it.
How you want to do it.
How you want to do it as an artist. Because that's why they're reaching out to you.
Yeah, for your
like, otherwise
flavor,
you do it. Like, otherwise you do it yourself. Like, I'm going to do it how I want to do it. And I think in any way that's
sticking to your guns.
Sticking to your guns. But you have to know, you have to learn. I think there's a journey to get to the point where you're comfortable enough with like, this is what I do. And this is what I'm good at. And this is why I do this. And this is why you're reaching out for a thing or whatever it may be, is because you're looking at my body of work. And if I've been putting out work that that wasn't what I wanted to be doing, you probably wouldn't be here looking at my work. Yeah. If that makes sense. You'd be looking at someone else's. So I think sticking to your guns, but learning to stick to your guns is like the struggle.
Right.
You know, it's like once you get there, it's like, cool. Because it shows itself. It's like, oh, I'm so glad I stuck to my guns on this. Or like, I'm so glad I turned down this part of this project because it wasn't going to work. And I gave them something that I'm really proud of and that they really like, and still is very unique to what you're doing versus some mixed bag of things that they...
Or half-assing yourself for someone else.
So that was a big thing. Because there's a long time, like, I didn't call myself an artist. I was like, well, I'll just like tinker around and do these things, and you know, sometimes people want to buy one or something, and it was like, but that's the journey. And I think it comes with your skill set too, and just learning and seeing your journey of your own work, and be like, okay, like maybe I am an artist, you know, maybe. So I think overcoming that is a big thing for anyone.
I gotcha. What is like your biggest personal growth from last year to this year?
Well, at the beginning of last year, January, I was still working in a restaurant. So it's been back at the end of January was my 1 year of being fully self-employed.
Congratulations.
Sustained. So that in itself was kind of a leap to do. And there's still a lot of learning and, you know, ups and downs with it. But that in itself was the biggest growth for sure, of just like a different set of, you know, problems and a different set of like positives that come with that, you know, versus being in a restaurant versus working for, you know, footing someone else's bill almost. So like, cool, like I'm making money, yeah, but like at the end of the day, I'm sustaining your idea, your goals, not mine. Like I'm a cog in the machine versus being the machine. And also everything that's inside of it. It's like, which comes with its own bag of stress and all those things, but it's like, it's so much more rewarding to do that. You know, maybe you don't make as much money, which
in the beginning.
I haven't yet.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know. It's like I wake up. Some days are more stressful than others, but like in general, I wake up. I'm like, this is like I'm sustained. Like I'm myself. Like I don't need. Granted, I haven't done taxes yet this year, so that could change my mind about a lot of things. I know it. But right now, that's the biggest growth. Is just because I had some commissions coming up, and I was like, you know, I was working in a job, and I was fairly burnt out because, I've been working in restaurants for 18 years or some shit. And my like ABC card, my alcohol serving card expired, was going to expire at the beginning of February. And I had a few commissions and I had a little bit, not a lot of money saved, but I had a little bit of money. And I was like, you know what? I was like, this, and it kind of started just as a thought, like, probably not going to do it. And then I just kept talking to myself, like, thinking about it. And I was like, well, maybe I could do it. And I had that mindset. I was like, well, if it doesn't work, that's not failing, because I can come back and do this stuff. I know this world. I know enough people where I can get a job if I need to get a job. And I was like, so the failure would be not to try it. Because I'll never, if I don't do it now, there's a chance that I might not do it in the future. So, shit, what happens if I take 3 months off and try to do this thing? And then, I have to go back to work in a regular job, So far I haven't had to yet. But yeah, and it's like, and even if I had to, I wouldn't see it as a failure.
No.
So I think the failure had been to not do it.
Right.
But I don't think, a few years ago, I wouldn't have looked at it that way. I would have looked at it like, no, there's no way. So I think that's like the growth is like getting to that point where you're confident in yourself and your work.
The person that you've become.
Yeah. And it's like, cool. Like, I do feel comfortable doing this, at least for a little while. Hopefully that continues.
Definitely. So how can people support you as an artist?
I mean, my commissions are pretty much always open. So if anybody wants to commission a piece, that's great. But the most practical way, I think, too, is like the, word of mouth type stuff is great. In social media, whatever, like sharing things or sharing my name with people that are in your circles that might need something. Like, and this year I really want to start doing more work with people, like, in the video, in the film world, production world, whether it be like music video stuff, and I know a lot of budgets are kind of small sometimes, so it's kind of hard to commission a unnecessary miniature piece. But that kind of stuff is like, that's what I would love to start doing too, like making these things for, videos, because that's what there's a lot of in Nashville. And yeah, I think, but bottom line is, if you want to support any artist, it's just like word of mouth, like tell people about the person that you're into, Yeah. That's all my commissions is word of mouth or like social media.
Awesome.
So.
And if anybody wants to financially help you, how can they do that? Do you have like a Venmo out, or
I have Venmo, but that's just how I do Patreon all my monetary. I don't have any Patreon or YouTube. I love the idea of,
if someone wanted to give you money because they like what you do, but they don't know how to help you.
Yeah, they could just reach out and we'll figure something out. But I don't have like an outstanding like GoFundMe account or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if they wanted to give you money? They could just hit you up on Instagram.
They can hit me up on Instagram, or I do have Venmo, and that's how I mostly have a business Venmo account. So that's mostly how I operate out of.
Like, okay, cool.
But
like an artistic donation or something.
Yeah, whatever works really. If someone wanted to give me money, however they gave it to me in any form or fashion, would be great.
Cool. Good to know, because I know people that like have the means and the money.
Yeah,
they're not necessarily creatives themselves, but they were like, "How can I keep this person going?"
Yeah, I would. There's also like films that I'm kind of part of that we're always looking for more people for budget wise, that kind of stuff, which inherently gives me the work to continue to do. So those types of things, I've applied for a few grants here and there, which none of them are really panned out, which is fine.
Sure.
But I don't know. I've never been one to look for like not the charity, but like just like that kind of where I'm just like, you know, if I can't do it myself, then I'll make something work. So that's kind of how I've always been. But
bootstrap, figure it out.
Yeah, like, and it's always worked enough for me.
Definitely.
But you know, that being said, someone's sitting on, you know, a chunk of change that they just don't need anymore. I'm not gonna say no to it.
Right.
There are a lot of things I would love to build. You know, a shop and a studio in my backyard, like to build miniatures in part of it, and then to have production studio in one part, so I can do stop motions. Like I have like two short stop motion scripts written, storyboards for them, and like concept work done. And it's like those are things that I would really love to be able to do at some point. But I don't have a lot of space. I don't have a lot of time right now, so it's like those things kind of unfortunately have to take back seats just due to the nature of what they are. So those are things.
Okay. And
yeah.
How do you like to consume media? Do you have like favorite YouTube videos you like to watch?
I don't. I feel like as far as depending on what the media is, you know, I listen to music while I'm working. A lot. I'll put movies on in the other room. YouTube, I don't do a lot of YouTube unless it's like instructional stuff. Because usually if I'm working, then, which is a lot of the time, that I'm listening to things versus like, and kind of paying attention, but you know, kind of like working and listening to music. So it's like I don't have to take a lot of brain power to do it. But I do love YouTube for instructional purposes, to like really like just I've learned how to do so many things and techniques for all sorts of things or like from YouTube, which is great. But I also love movies. Like I try to watch a movie at night and I try to find something I haven't seen. Sometimes it doesn't work out, or I just get stuck in like the endless like, oh, I don't know what to watch, you know.
Yeah.
But I always try to find something that, you know, I haven't seen before, some weird B movie that I've missed, or, you know, somehow I've missed like quite a few Hitchcock movies that I've been going back through and rewatching. Like, I don't know how I missed this movie, but it's great. And like, I should have saw it a long time ago, you know? But yeah.
Cool. Well, was there anything you'd like to add that I might not have asked you about?
I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know. I'm sure like tomorrow I'll be like, you know what we should have talked about? We'll do part 2. Yeah. But yeah, I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, well, here's the last question.
Yeah.
What is something absurd you love or do?
Something absurd I love or do? Yeah. Just in general?
Yeah, it could be a thing or something to do.
I talk to myself a lot. I mean, I feel like a lot of people do that. But I don't think I answer myself, like, which I think is like the important
part that's not concerning.
Yeah. Concerning. I'm like, just go over scenarios. I don't know, man. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's pretty absurd.
Yeah. But brainstorm out loud.
I do brainstorm a lot out loud. I do shit with my hands. Like, if like I've been doing some kinetic, like those little automaton, like little moving geared vignette things, and it's like sometimes I'll be in the shower and I'll be like, okay, so like if it goes this way, if it goes horizontal, and I have a thing that spins this way, that means it'll make that movement go up. And so I do a lot of shit like that. Like I'm like what's the new Apple VR thing?
I forgot.
But it's like you see the videos of people doing that shit.
Yeah.
That's me without the goggles. I'm just like, okay, but I think it's just like a kinetic like movement. Like,
yeah.
I do that kind of stuff all the time.
Nice.
You know, if I'm like, I have a wall and then I do this wall, then I can probably do this support that'll make this like sit here. It's like my 3D world in my head that I'm just kind of like acting out in reality.
Right.
You know, that part of my brain.
Yeah.
So I feel like I think in 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional most of the time now, especially since I'm doing models. It's like how to make this work, or how to
flipping it from 3D to 2D to 2D to 3D.
Yeah, like the perspective's like, oh, cool, this is like this perspective, but what would that look like in real life? And how does that affect? So
nice. Well,
thank you. I feel like those are both pretty strange.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
But it works for you.
Yeah, whatever works, I guess, within reason. I mean, you don't get too crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Devin, thanks for coming over
Of
and
course,
doing
man.
this.
I appreciate you having me. Yeah.
Awesome.